Good morning, everybody. This is Father Walsh, and I'd like to give you a few thoughts on the scripture for this coming weekend. And in order to make full sense out of the Sunday's Gospel, I think you have to realize that it's really the second half of the Gospel of last Sunday, or as a continuation, I should say, of last Sunday's Gospel. And last Sunday's Gospel, we find that Jesus had begun his public ministry after being baptized, and he was going around teaching and preaching. And so all of a sudden, we find that this weekend he has arrived at home at his home church, if you will, his home synagogue in Nazareth, and this will be his first time back there, and of course people are looking forward to hearing him, to hear what he has to say, and hopefully he's going to say something very positive in terms of how God is taking care of them. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be a good experience for him or for them, because we're told that as normally happens, as a newcomer comes in, he stands up to read the scripture, and he finds the passage from Isaiah the prophet, and this is what the passage says. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim a year acceptable to the Lord." That's from first chapter 61 of the book of Elijah. So when they heard this message, initially they thought it was a favorable message, because he was talking about setting captives free and letting the oppressed go free, and it was. Because really what they were really looking for deep down in their hearts was they wanted to get rid of the Romans. And so initially, in hearing that message, they thought that's really what he was talking about, setting the people of Israel free from the yoke of the Romans. But on second thought, they came to the realization that's not really what he's saying. This mission statement that he's giving out today, it's really in the spirit of Isaiah. It's really a spiritual message. He's talking about not talking about physical freedom. He's talking about spiritual freedom, and in a sense, in saying that, he's quoting an Old Testament prophecy, and he's making himself out to be what they felt was something more than himself. So it makes them uneasy. But then it really gets worse when all of a sudden he talks about Elijah and Elisha during difficult times in the history of Israel, and how Elijah went out to the margins, the people outside of Israel. For example, to this widow in a place called Zarephath. This is during a famine and drought, and he took care of her needs. Not a word about taking care of the needs of his own people. And similarly, Elisha, we're told, also went outside of Israel itself, and he was taking care of Naaman, who was a leper. And so in saying this, they came to realize that Jesus wasn't. They didn't seem to be that concerned about them. Rather, he was saying that he was identifying with Elijah and Elisha, and in a sense he was saying that just as they were concerned about people that are out on the margins rather than the people themselves, they felt that Jesus was certainly making a claim that made them furious. Okay, because in their eyes, the people who weren't part of the covenant, people who weren't Jewish people, for as far as they were concerned, they were godless kind of people, or they were people who lived apart from the covenant, and so on. And so, really, as far as they were concerned, rather than treating them with love and with care, Jesus should have been talking about justice and punishment in their lives. So it was for them. For them it was very upsetting, and so much so that they wanted to try to destroy him. Whereas on the other hand, of course, this was, as far as Jesus was concerned, this was the beginning of his rejection. And we know that his rejection ultimately led to his death. But it starts right there in his home territory. So we think of Jesus and his concern for the needs of those who are outside of the promised people. And in some ways, it's a message not just for what happened back then. It's also a message for ourselves in terms of sometimes we're living in a world that's very broken, and there are all kinds of people involved in all kinds of strange things, and so often we're of the opinion that those people really should be treated with justice, and they should be condemned. Whereas that's really not the message of Jesus for them. I think that this takes us right by to the second reading on Sunday, which is chapter 13, 1 Corinthians, which is God is love, and where he says there are in the end three things that last: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest one of these is love. So Jesus is a loving God, and his concern is for everybody. It's for the whole of creation and for everybody in it. And so just as that's the message which Jesus gave to the people of his time, that's the message for us today in the world in which we live. And consequently, it's instead of treating people always, the outsiders, treating them with justice and condemnation, I think that the challenge is to treat them with mercy and with love. Thank you.